Hey everyone. Tonight, we're stepping into the life of an ordinary woman in 14th century England. Forget queens in silk gowns and noble women wandering through candlelit castles. If you woke up here as a village woman, the greatest danger might not be war, plague, or the executioner. It might simply be making it through an ordinary day. Before we begin, if these quiet journeys into the past help you unwind, you can leave a like and subscribe. And tell me where in the world you're listening from and what time it is there. Now lower the lights, settle into your pillow, and let's step back together. Good morning. The year is 1325. The good news is that you survived the night. The bad news is that everyone in this room is already awake, and you are the reason breakfast has not started. The fire is dead, the floor is freezing, your shoes are damp, and before the sun is fully visible, your first hour of work has already begun. You do not wake to an alarm. You wake because somebody has moved beside you, a child has coughed near your feet, and a hen has made a sound from somewhere it was definitely not invited to be. The darkness is not the soft darkness of blackout curtains. It is thick, smoky darkness, carrying the faint smell of old wool, damp earth, ashes, people, animals, and yesterday's supper. For tonight's journey, you are living in a modest English village. Your exact life would vary enormously depending on where you lived, how wealthy your household was, whether you were married, widowed, unmarried, free, or tied by custom to a manor. There was no single medieval female experience. A merchant's widow in York, a dairy worker in Somerset, a servant in London, and a noble woman in a castle inhabited very different worlds. But you are not any of those women, at least not yet. You are an ordinary working woman in a household that has enough to survive when the harvest is decent, and very little room for mistakes when it is not. You have a husband, 2 children, and an older female relative who may be your mother or his. The records have not preserved her opinion on the matter, but you may safely assume she has one. Your house is sturdier than the miserable mud hut imagined in some films. Timber supports the roof. The walls may be made from timber framing filled with wattle and daub, or from local stone or chalk, depending on the region. A thatched roof shelters you from most rain, provided it has been properly repaired. Wooden shutters cover small openings. Glass is a luxury you will not be admiring over breakfast. The house may have more than one space, but privacy is limited. In many peasant homes, daily life gathers around a central hearth. A side room might serve for storage, dairying, or sleeping. At the other end, livestock may be kept under the same long roof, separated from the living space by a passage or partition. You do not regard this arrangement as charmingly rustic. You regard the cow as valuable, the winter as cold, and thieves as real. The hearth is the center of the household because it offers heat, light, cooked food, and the useful illusion that smoke knows where the roof opening is. There may be no proper chimney. Smoke rises, wanders, curls along the rafters, irritates your eyes, and eventually escapes through a vent or the thatch. It also helps discourage insects and preserves material in the roof. Medieval home design is full of arrangements that are simultaneously inconvenient and clever. Your bed is not necessarily a bare pile of straw on the floor. It might be a simple wooden frame, a low platform, or bedding laid upon a chest or bench. A mattress could be stuffed with straw, chaff, wool, or feathers if you were fortunate. Linen sheets are valuable. Woolen blankets matter even more. Several people may share a sleeping space because bodies produce heat and because spare bedrooms have not yet been invented for your social class. You slept in a linen shift. You now push aside the woolen covering and place one bare foot onto the floor. It is cold enough to make every modern promise you ever made about becoming a morning person disappear. There is no bedside lamp waiting at the touch of a switch. A candle costs material. A rushlight, made from the pith of a rush dipped in fat, gives a modest flame and must not be wasted. You feel your way by memory. You know the position of the stool, the storage chest, the water vessel, and the small body that has rolled into the path between you and the hearth. First, you must revive the fire. If anyone banked the embers properly last night, a red glow may still survive beneath the ash. You kneel and search carefully with a stick. Ash stains your fingers. Your eyes water in the old smoke. You uncover a faint warmth, add dry tinder, and blow gently. Too softly, and nothing happens. Too hard, and you receive a face full of ash. Medieval life has developed an immediate performance review. Suppose the embers are truly dead. Now you need flint, steel, tinder, patience, and the steady hands of someone who has done this hundreds of times. You strike a spark into dry material, coax it into a glow, then feed it with the smallest twigs before adding anything larger. Green wood smokes badly. Damp fuel wastes time. A roaring fire, built carelessly, may throw sparks into the thatch and convert breakfast into a village emergency. You, arriving from the modern world, would probably begin with confidence. You have seen campfires. You have watched people light them in films. 5 minutes later, you would be crouched over a collection of damp sticks while the household silently revised its opinion of you. The woman whose life you are borrowing does not need a tutorial. Her hands know how dry tinder feels. She knows which wood catches quickly, which gives lasting heat, and how much fuel can be spared. She knows how to protect a coal overnight and how to carry a live ember safely from a neighbor if necessary. Fire is not background scenery. It is a daily technology. As the flame strengthens, the room appears in fragments. A wooden chest, a clay pot, bundles hanging from pegs, a spindle, a basket needing repair, a loaf wrapped in cloth, a child's tousled hair, the pale outline of the door. You are not seeing poverty as a theatrical costume. You are seeing a working system in which the household's tools, food, clothing, and labor all occupy the same small world. Now, you dress. Your basic garment is a linen shift or smock worn against the skin. Over it comes a woolen dress or gown, perhaps fitted more closely than modern stereotypes suggest, with another layer added in cold weather. Wool is useful because it insulates, even when somewhat damp, but it can be heavy, scratchy, and slow to dry. Your clothes are not a brown sack. Medieval people liked color, and dyes could produce reds, blues, greens, yellows, and russet shades. Though bright, even color often costs more. The cut and quality of your clothing announce your means and status. Your garments have been made, altered, handed down, and patched. They are investments. If the hem is muddy, you clean it. If a seam opens, you mend it. If a child outgrows a piece, the cloth is used again. A worn garment can become a smaller garment, then a wrapping, then a rag, and only after a long career does it surrender completely. You cover your hair, especially if you are married. The exact style varies by place, date, and status, but a linen, veil, kerchief, hood, or wimple can protect hair from dirt and mark respectability. This is not merely fashion. Reputation matters, and clothing helps the community read who you are. The community, as you will discover, is always reading. Your shoes are leather and precious enough to be repaired repeatedly. They are not shaped like modern waterproof boots. The ground outside is mud, frost, dung, straw, stones, and puddles. If your shoes are still damp from yesterday, that is unfortunate, but not a reason to remain home. Remaining home is not a recognized treatment for damp shoes. You fasten a belt around your waist. From it may hang a small pouch, keys, a knife, or other useful items. Pockets sewn into garments are not yet organizing your life. The household keys, if you possess them, are signs of responsibility. They may open a chest containing cloth, food, or money. A key means trust, work, and the knowledge that if anything goes missing, people will ask you first. Before breakfast, there is water. The village may draw water from a spring, stream, pond, or well. The distance matters. So does the weather. So does the condition of the path. Water is heavy. 1 liter weighs 1 kilogram, and your household needs it for drinking, cooking, brewing, washing, cleaning, and animals. Every drop that does not arrive by rain or stand conveniently nearby must be carried. The claim that medieval people never drank water because it was always dangerous is far too simple. They did drink water, and communities cared about access to good sources. They also drank ale, milk, and other beverages. Water quality varied, especially in crowded towns. But your village spring may be perfectly familiar and usable. Familiar does not mean effortless. You take a wooden bucket or ceramic vessel and step outside. Dawn is a gray suggestion behind the clouds. The lane is uneven. A dog watches you with the expression of an animal that has no intention of helping. Smoke begins to lift from another roof. Somewhere a door opens, then another. The village is waking as a network. You may greet a neighbor, exchange a comment about the weather, ask after a sick child, or hear a piece of news before your water reaches the house. There is little formal privacy, but there is also little complete isolation. People lend embers, tools, labor, information, and judgment. The last item is supplied in unlimited quantity. At the water source, you fill the vessel. If it is a well, you must lower and raise the bucket without losing it, contaminating the water, or slipping. If it is a stream, you choose the cleanest practical place. You know the seasons of this water. You know how high it runs after rain and where ice forms. You know that fetching it while ill, exhausted, heavily pregnant, or carrying a small child remains fetching it. Now carry it home. A full bucket pulls at your shoulder and hand. Water shifts with every step. The path is slick. You cannot spill half of it because your wrist hurts. Well, you can, but then you must return and do the work twice. Within 10 minutes of medieval womanhood, your appreciation for indoor plumbing has become almost spiritual. Back at the house, the fire needs attention. The children need attention. The pot needs attention. The animal making that noise needs immediate attention. Medieval domestic work has no loading screen between tasks. You pour only what you need. Water is not wasted. A small amount may be warmed for washing. You do not climb into a steaming private bath every morning, but neither do you proudly remain covered in dirt for historical accuracy. Medieval people valued cleanliness, even though their methods, standards, and access differed from ours. Hands and face can be washed. Teeth may be rubbed with cloth, water, salt, or herbs. Hair can be combed to remove dirt and lice. Linen worn next to the skin can be laundered. Bathing the entire body requires time, fuel, water, space, and labor. In towns, public bathhouses existed in various periods and places. In a village, a tub may be brought out when practical, but heating enough water is a project. You are much more likely to wash in parts, using a basin and cloth. Cleanliness is not absent. Convenience is. The older woman beside you notices that you are using too much warm water. She does not say anything. This is somehow worse. Now breakfast. The mainstay of many ordinary diets is grain. Bread matters enormously. Pottage, a flexible stew or thick soup made with grains, peas, beans, vegetables, herbs, and whatever else is available, can simmer over the hearth. Cheese, onions, leeks, eggs, fish, dairy foods, or meat may appear depending on wealth, season, region, and religious rules. The poor are not eating a royal feast, but neither is every meal a bowl of grey despair. Today there is yesterday's bread and a pot that can be reheated. The bread is dark or mixed because the finest white wheat flour belongs higher on the social ladder. Rye, barley, oats, peas, or beans may supplement wheat. Texture varies. Grit from milling can wear teeth over years. A hard piece of bread can be softened in liquid because wasting it would be absurd. You stir the pottage and judge its thickness. You add water, perhaps a handful of grain, perhaps an onion or herb. There is no printed recipe with exact measurements. You cook by sight, smell, touch, memory, and the supplies available. You know how much will feed 5 people. You know what must be saved for later. You know whether the last piece of cheese can be used today or needs to survive until market day. You also know the calendar of fasting. The medieval Christian year shapes the table. On many days, religious practice limits meat or certain animal products, though rules, observance, and local habits vary. Saints' days and festivals can bring change, celebration, and relief from ordinary routines. Time is not divided only into weekdays and weekends. It is marked by church seasons, bells, daylight, weather, planting, lambing, haymaking, and harvest. You taste the breakfast. It needs salt, but salt costs money. You add less than your modern tongue expects. Sugar is not waiting in a paper bag. Honey may sweeten something when available, but ordinary food is shaped by thrift and season, not constant sweetness. The children are hungry. One is old enough to help and young enough to avoid helping with impressive creativity. Childhood exists, play exists, affection exists, but children are also members of a working household. They fetch, watch animals, scare birds from crops, gather fuel, carry small loads, spin, weed, and learn the tasks that will keep them alive as adults. You hand out bread. Portions reflect need, age, custom, and authority. Your husband may expect his place. The older relative may have earned hers through age and work. You make sure the smallest child eats, but your own share can be the easiest to reduce when food is scarce. No law of nature requires this. Household habit and maternal calculation often do. The meal is brief. Ordinary people do not spend 2 hours discussing the presentation. You are fueling labor. There are no individual plates for every course. Wooden bowls, trenchers, spoons, cups, and a shared pot may serve the household. A knife is common. A fork is not part of your daily setting. You know which child will spill something before it happens. While they eat, you plan. This planning is one of the least visible parts of your work. You must remember how much flour remains, whether the cow is giving less milk, which garment needs mending, whether fuel is dry, when rent or dues are expected, who promised to help with the field, whether a child has a fever, whether the hen is truly missing, and whether the weather suggests washing cloth today or regretting the attempt by noon. There is no household calendar on the wall. You carry the calendar in your body and memory. The bell tells you part of the time. The sun tells you another part. The growth of plants, the condition of animals, and the stores in the chest tell you the season. Your knowledge is not written, but it is not simple. Imagine that you, the visitor, are asked to take over. You might read, you might calculate, you might operate devices that would appear miraculous, but can you judge the heat of an open hearth without a thermometer? Can you make bread without a clock? Can you recognize spoiled grain before feeding it to children? Can you turn milk into usable butter or cheese? Can you stretch a food store across a hungry week? Can you tell whether a cloud means a shower, a lost afternoon, or danger to a crop? This is why surviving one day is not merely a test of toughness. It is a test of competence in a world whose instructions were learned from childhood. After breakfast, nothing is finished. The bowls must be scraped and rinsed. Scraps may go to animals. Ash can be useful for cleaning, making lye, or managing waste. Grease is not casually poured away. Bones, cloth, wood, leather, and food residues may all have further uses. A household with few resources becomes skilled at refusing the modern category called rubbish. You sweep the floor, though the result will not resemble a polished modern kitchen. Floors vary. Some are packed earth, some have stone, boards, or coverings of rushes and straw in wealthier settings. Fresh material can be laid down and old material removed. Dirt is managed, not magically defeated. The air improves when the door opens, but the cold comes in. You make the ancient domestic choice between smoke and weather. The weather wins briefly. An animal needs feeding. If the cow shares part of the building, its warmth is useful and its smell is confident. Cows provide milk, calves, manure, labor in some settings, and wealth you can count without coins. A pig can convert scraps into meat. Hens offer eggs when they feel cooperative. Geese can guard a yard with the temperament of minor officials. You check each creature because animals cannot be postponed until a convenient appointment. A sick animal threatens more than inconvenience. It can mean lost food, lost income, lost breeding, or debt. You notice appetite, movement, dung, udders, hooves, feathers, and sound. Veterinary science as you know it is not available, but observation and inherited remedies are. You milk the cow if your household owns one or has access to one. Your hands must be clean enough, the vessel must be sound, the cow must be calm. Milk spoils quickly without refrigeration, so it becomes butter, cheese, curds, or part of a meal. Dairying is a chain of time-sensitive tasks. Missing one link wastes something valuable. You sit close to the animal, forehead against its warm side, and begin. The motion appears simple until your fingers cramp and the cow shifts her weight. A modern visitor might survive medieval breakfast only to be defeated by a creature named after a flower. Now light has entered the house properly. The morning reveals stains that darkness kindly concealed. It also reveals the weather. If the sky is clear, outdoor labor waits. If rain is falling, different labor waits. There is no version in which nothing waits. You look towards the fields beyond the houses. The land around you is divided by custom, ownership, strips, meadows, pasture, woodland rights, and obligations that you understand because your household depends upon them. Depending on your legal and economic status, you may owe labor or payments to the lord of the manor. You may work your household strips as well as land belonging to someone else. Women labor in agriculture in many ways, even when records describe the household through a male name. But before you leave, you take up the spindle. Spinning is so closely associated with women that the word spinster eventually becomes a label for an unmarried woman. Wool must be cleaned, prepared, and twisted into thread before it can become cloth. A spindle is portable. That is useful because textile work fills the spaces between other work. You can spin while watching children, walking, talking, waiting, or tending animals. An empty hand is treated as an opportunity. The movement is repetitive and skilled. Fibers must be drawn evenly. The spindle must turn with control. Thread that is too thick, too thin, or weak creates problems later. A practiced spinner produces a steady line almost without looking. You produce something resembling a distressed caterpillar. Cloth is everywhere in your life, yet every piece begins with labor. Sheep must be raised and shorn. Wool must be sorted, washed, carded or combed, spun, woven, fulled, dyed, cut, and sewn. Linen requires growing and processing flax. A garment that appears plain may contain an astonishing number of hours. This is why clothing is patched until the patch itself requires a patch. You tuck the spindle away because another task calls. The younger child has become quiet, which is rarely reassuring. The older child has remembered an urgent obligation located in the opposite direction from work. Your husband is preparing for his own labor. The older woman is already doing something you fail to notice and will later describe as obvious. The sun is now above the horizon. You have been awake perhaps 2 hours. You have revived the fire, carried water, washed, dressed, prepared food, fed the household, cleaned, tended animals, handled milk, organized supplies, corrected children, and planned the rest of the day. No trumpet has sounded. No chronicler will record it. No illuminated manuscript will paint you heroically against a golden background. And this was the easy part, because it happened close to home. Now you must step into the wider village, where labor, money, law, faith, reputation, and other people's expectations are waiting together. You secure the chest, cover the food, check the fire, call the children, and open the door. Morning has finally begun. Outside, the village is brighter, colder, and much busier than it seemed from the doorway. A cart creaks somewhere beyond the houses. A man calls to an animal. A child runs past carrying something that appears too large for him and too important to drop. The church tower stands above the roofs, visible from nearly every part of the settlement. It is a landmark, a clock, a meeting place, and a reminder that your life belongs to several overlapping communities at once. You belong to a household. You belong to a neighborhood. You belong to a parish. You may belong to a manor whose lord claims rents, labor, fees, or authority. You also belong to a web of kinship and obligation that is difficult to draw because half of it consists of favors remembered for years. There is no single word in your world that neatly separates housework from paid work. Work moves across the door. You grow food that your family eats. You process food that might be sold. You spin wool for household cloth, for a merchant, or for wages. You help in fields that are associated in records with your husband, yet the harvest will fail just as efficiently if your hands are absent. The modern visitor might ask when your working day begins and ends. The honest answer is that it changes with daylight and season, and that the question would make you laugh. The day begins when something living needs you. It ends when you can no longer see, when fuel must be saved, or when exhaustion wins a negotiation it has been conducting since dawn. Today is an ordinary working day in early autumn, after much of the grain has been cut, but while every household is still preparing for colder weather. This gives you an unreasonable number of tasks, which is convenient because the Middle Ages are not known for respecting a quiet calendar. You carry a basket and walk towards the strips your household works. The landscape is not an endless private farm enclosed by modern fences. In many regions, villagers cultivate scattered strips in large open fields, while meadows, pastures, woodland, and waste are governed by local rights and customs. These arrangements vary. The important thing is that land is not simply empty ground. Every hedge, path, grazing right, fallen branch, and patch of common pasture may have a history and a rule attached to it. You know which strips are yours to work. You know when animals may graze after harvest. You know where fuel can be gathered and where taking wood could bring a fine. You know which neighbor will complain if a boundary is disturbed by the width of 1 foot. Surveying equipment is not required when everyone possesses an ancestral memory of the disputed foot. Women participate in almost every stage of agricultural work, though the division of labor shifts with place, crop, wealth, household, and season. You may weed, hoe, plant, reap, bind sheaves, rake hay, gather grain, glean, tend gardens, milk animals, feed poultry, manage dairying, and carry produce. Some tasks are more strongly associated with men, others with women. But necessity has little interest in a perfectly tidy chart. At harvest, labor is urgent. Grain left in the field can be damaged by rain, animals, or theft. The whole community may work at a pace that would be difficult to sustain for long. Hired workers can earn wages. Women often receive lower pay than men, even when their labor is necessary. A record may list a man's work as a full task and a woman's as assistance, though the aching back does not recognize the difference. This morning, you and the older child gather what remains after the main cutting. Gleaning, the collection of fallen ears of grain, can be an important resource for poorer households, though access is shaped by local custom. You bend, reach, straighten, move, and bend again. The work seems gentle for the first minute. By the 100th repetition, your lower back has composed a formal complaint. The child is faster because the child is closer to the ground. This is one of the few advantages of being small in a labor system that has already noticed you can carry things. You place the gathered ears into a basket. A few handfuls do not look impressive, but grain becomes bread, porridge, pottage, ale, rent, seed, and security. You do not measure wealth only in coins. A full grain chest in late autumn can feel richer than silver. An empty one in spring can make silver disappear quickly. The year 1325 lies before the Black Death reaches England. The population is high, pressure on land can be severe, and memories of the Great Famine of 1315 to 1317 are recent. Years of terrible weather and crop failure brought hunger and disease across northern Europe. Your household may remember scarcity, not as a chapter in a textbook, but as missing relatives, thin animals, poor seed, and meals that became smaller until there was nowhere left to reduce them. That memory shapes behavior. Food is stored carefully. Seed grain is protected because eating it solves today by destroying next year. Surplus, when it exists, is not proof that fear has ended. It is protection against weather, illness, rent, failed animals, and the many ways an ordinary household can be pushed towards hunger. You inspect the field for weeds and damage. You recognize plants that a modern visitor would classify only as green. Some are food, some are medicine, some are animal fodder, some poison livestock. Some reveal the condition of the soil. Knowledge of plants is not a charming extra. It is part of your household economy. In the garden close to the house, you may grow leeks, onions, cabbages, peas, beans, herbs, and other useful plants. The exact mix depends on climate and custom. Fruit trees, nuts, berries, and gathered wild foods add variety when available. People in your century do not live on meat and bread alone, despite what banqueting scenes suggest. For ordinary families, vegetables and pulses can form much of the daily diet. Meat is not absent, but its frequency depends on wealth. Pork can be preserved. Bacon and salted meat stretch through the year. Fish matters, especially on religious fast days, and may be fresh, salted, smoked, or dried. Eggs and dairy provide important nourishment. A household that keeps a cow, pig, or poultry has assets. But assets require feeding before they feed you. From the field, you move towards the meadow edge to gather fuel. Firewood may come from managed woodland, hedges, fallen branches, or customary rites to collect certain material. You cannot simply cut down the nearest tree. Timber belongs to someone, and good trees are valuable for building. Smaller wood, brush, peat, turf, straw, or dried plant material may supplement fuel depending on region. The best fuel must be seasoned. Wet wood fills the house with smoke and produces less useful heat. You gather what is permitted and what you can carry. A bundle that feels reasonable when you lift it becomes ambitious halfway home. Your posture has been shaped by loads. Water hangs from the hand or shoulder. Wood rests against the back. Grain, laundry, children, pots, milk, and baskets travel because you move them. Wheels exist. Carts exist. Pack animals exist. But not for every short journey and not for every household. Human muscle remains one of the most available forms of transport. On the path, you pass a neighbor named Alice.
We will call her Alice because medieval English records contain a generous supply of Alices, Matildas, Joans, Agneses, and Margarets, although local names vary. Alice asks whether you will go to market.
You say yes. She asks whether you can carry a message to her sister. You agree. She then provides a message long enough to require its own cart. Back at the house, you stack the gathered fuel where it can remain dry. The small child has acquired mud in a quantity that suggests careful planning. You wipe hands and face, inspect a scraped knee, and decide it is not serious. Medieval parenting requires frequent judgment without the reassurance of a thermometer, antiseptic cream, or a late-night search engine prepared to diagnose everything as either nothing or catastrophe. Children are vulnerable. Infection, accidents, and illness can become dangerous quickly. Parents know this, even if their grief is not always recorded. The idea that medieval adults did not love children because childhood mortality was high mistakes, limited evidence for limited feeling. People named children, prayed for them, cared for them, worried over them, taught them, and mourned them. You cannot protect them by removing every risk. The household needs their help. The village contains open fires, deep water, sharp tools, animals, carts, unstable ground, and work. Children learn through participation. The older child can gather kindling, watch the younger one, mind geese, weed, fetch, carry, and begin textile work. Skill enters through the fingers long before it can be explained in words. You hand the child a task and receive the universal facial expression of someone who has just discovered injustice. Now you turn to cloth. The wool gathered earlier in the year must be cleaned and prepared. Depending on local practice and the stage of production, fibers may be teased, combed, carded, or arranged for spinning. Dirt, grease, and vegetable matter cling to the fleece. Washing wool uses water and labor. Working it leaves fine fibers on clothing and in the air. Spinning can occupy countless hours. A drop spindle is simple in appearance, a shaft, a weight, and fiber. The spinner draws out fibers while the rotating spindle twists them into yarn. The quality of the yarn depends on preparation, rhythm, tension, and judgment. Thread for a fine cloth differs from thick yarn for a coarse one. A practiced woman adjusts continuously. You spin while speaking with Alice, who has arrived to help prepare wool. Work shared between women is still work, but company changes its texture. Stories are told. News is exchanged. Songs may set a rhythm. Children are corrected communally. A borrowed tool is returned. A marriage possibility is discussed with the delicacy of a cart entering a narrow gate. This social labor matters. A household cannot master every emergency alone.
Women attend births, nurse the sick, prepare bodies for burial, exchange food, share childcare, help at harvest, lend utensils, and carry knowledge between generations.
Their networks are not sentimental decorations around the formal economy. They are part of what allows the economy to function. The wool in your hands becomes more even. Alice's becomes even faster. You resist staring. When enough yarn exists, weaving may be done within the household or by a specialist. In towns, textile production can involve organized trades and merchants. Fulling cleans and thickens woven cloth. Dyers use plant and mineral materials with careful processes to achieve color. Tailors cut valuable fabric with frightening confidence. Women work throughout textile production. Though guild rules and public recognition may favor men in many places, the phrase women's work can hide both the importance and range of what women do. Women appear in records as brewers, bakers, spinners, weavers, hucksters, innkeepers, servants, agricultural laborers, shopkeepers, healers, midwives, and participants in family crafts. Some work beside husbands. Some continue a trade as widows. Some operate independently according to local law and custom. Some are fined for breaking regulations, which at least proves the authorities noticed their business. Ale offers a good example. Small-scale brewing is often domestic and female. Because ale spoils relatively quickly before hops become widespread in English brewing, it is made frequently and sold locally. A woman who produces a good batch can place a sign outside and sell to neighbors. Officials may test measures, quality, or price. A woman who repeatedly appears in an ale court record is not necessarily failing at business. She may be brewing often enough to attract regulation. Brewing begins with grain that could otherwise become food. It must be malted, crushed, soaked, heated, strained, fermented, and stored. Temperature must be managed without a dial. Clean vessels matter. Timing matters. Yeast is understood through practice rather than microbiology. The result can nourish the household and create income, but a ruined batch wastes both fuel and grain. You inspect your own ale vessel. The smell tells you something. The surface tells you something else. A modern visitor sees brown liquid. You see whether the process is behaving. The difference between those views may be the difference between a sale and an apology. By mid-morning, you prepare to walk to a nearby market settlement. Not every village has a market, and authorized markets operate on particular days. The journey may be a few miles. You take eggs, a small quantity of yarn, perhaps butter or cheese, and whatever else your household can spare. The goods must arrive intact. You must also return with salt and a repaired metal fitting if the price is acceptable. Money exists, but many exchanges combine coins, credit, payment in kind, and obligation. English pennies are silver, with small silver halfpennies and farthings also in circulation. Shillings and pounds are chiefly units of account, rather than coins you expect to pull from a purse. Most everyday people do not carry a pocketful of neatly differentiated modern money. A few pennies represent real labor. Prices fluctuate. A harvest changes grain prices. A war changes demand. A damaged bridge changes transport. A merchant's scale changes your mood. You need arithmetic, memory, and nerve. You may not write a column of figures, but you know what your eggs fetched last week and what salt should cost. The road is not an empty wilderness. You pass workers, animals, carts, and perhaps a traveling cleric or trader. Roads vary from reasonably maintained routes to mud with ambitions. A wheeled cart finds every rut. Walking is normal, and distance is understood through time, terrain, and weather rather than through the complaint that the parking space was far away. You do not travel carelessly. Violence and theft are real, though the countryside is not filled with bandits waiting behind every tree. Company offers safety. Reputation offers some protection. Knowing whose land you cross matters. Darkness makes ordinary risks worse, so you plan to return well before night. At the market, sound arrives first. Animals, bargaining, metalwork, voices, bells, and vendors compress into a space more crowded than your village lane. Smells follow. Bread, fish, dung, leather, smoke, onions, wool, sweat, and something frying in fat. The medieval world is not silent or colorless. Stalls display pottery, cloth, food, tools, pins, belts, shoes, and second-hand goods. Most objects have been made near enough that their maker can be known. A poor pot can earn a potter a reputation. A good knife may serve for years. Repairers are as important as makers because replacement is expensive. You choose a place and display your goods. This requires confidence. Customers inspect eggs and press butter. They ask whether the yarn is even. One woman finds a fault so tiny that it may exist only in her desire to pay less. You explain, politely, that she is welcome to spin her own. Your voice in the market is not shocking. Women buy and sell. Their visibility varies by trade and town, and formal offices often remain male. But commerce is not conducted by men, while women disappear into doorways. Household survival requires women to negotiate. You sell most of the eggs. One is cracked, and you keep it for home. The yarn brings less than you hoped. The butter brings more. The combined coins do not feel like profit until you subtract grain, labor, salt, fuel, animal feed, and the risk of spoilage. Medieval business accounting can be performed entirely through a sigh. You buy salt. Salt preserves food and improves a monotonous meal. It can be expensive depending on supply and transport. You inspect the measure. The seller appears wounded that you would question his honesty. This performance has probably been successful since trade began. The metalworker cannot repair your fitting today. He can do it by the next market day. If you leave it and pay part now, you consider his reliability. His brother owes your husband's cousin for cart work. This is either reassurance or an additional reason to walk away. You agree to the repair and make sure two nearby people hear the terms. Witnesses matter because formal documentation is not available for every small agreement. Public exchange creates memory. The market itself acts as a network of observation. If the metalworker fails you, the story may travel faster than his next customer. You deliver Alice's message to her sister. Her sister replies with a second message containing 3 family updates: one invitation, a request for onions, and a correction to something Alice apparently said last Sunday. You now carry more information than merchandise. The return basket is lighter, but the day is warmer. Your feet ache. Dust clings to the hem of your gown. You eat a small piece of bread while walking. Meals are not always seated events. Work and hunger rarely consult etiquette. On the road, You meet a woman carrying a baby and leading an older child. She is traveling to visit family in the next village. Her pace is slow, so you walk together for a time. She tells you that her husband has been ordered to attend the manor court. You tell her which path is less muddy. The children observe one another with deep suspicion. The conversation turns to illness. Someone nearby has a fever. You discuss whether it began with chills, whether a rash appeared, whether the person ate, and what remedy has been tried. Medical knowledge travels through households, specialists, clergy, experienced women, and written texts accessible to a smaller, educated group. Remedies can include herbs, foods, baths, poultices, prayer, charms, bleeding, or attempts to balance the body's humors. Some treatments help. Some soothe. Some do nothing. Some cause harm. The same can be said of medicine in many centuries. Although your own century lacks antibiotics, modern surgery, germ theory, and reliable pain relief, a small wound that would be treated easily in your world can become dangerous here. You carry useful plant knowledge. You may know herbs associated with digestion, wounds, coughs, childbirth, sleep, or pain. The exact recipe varies, and caution is wise because plants can poison as well as heal. Your knowledge is empirical, spiritual, traditional, and local. It is neither pure magic nor modern pharmacy. When the woman turns towards her village, you continue alone with your child. Clouds are building. You calculate the washing at home. If rain arrives, wet cloth will hang indoors, adding damp to smoke. If you postpone, the pile grows. There is no perfect answer, only the answer least likely to create tomorrow's problem. Laundry is among the most demanding household tasks. Linen, worn close to the body, absorbs sweat and dirt. Cloth can be soaked, beaten, rubbed, boiled, or treated with lye made from wood ash, depending on material and practice. Water must be carried or the laundry taken to water. Fuel heats it. Wet cloth becomes heavy. Hands become raw in cold weather. You do not wash every garment equally. Wool needs care and may be brushed, aired, spot cleaned, or washed less frequently. Linen can endure stronger treatment. Stains are treated because clean clothing signals order and respectability, even when the road covers the hem again within minutes. At home, you decide to wash only the most necessary linen. You heat water, measure ash solution carefully, and work the cloth. The older woman helps wring it. The two of you twist in opposite directions until water streams out. There are no rubber gloves. There is no gentle cycle. Your wrists know what clean linen costs. The clouds pass without rain. A small victory so satisfying that no modern person would understand it unless their entire household inventory were hanging from a line. Now the midday meal, though it may fall earlier than a modern lunch, mealtimes vary with household and season. You reheat pottage and add the cracked egg. Bread is divided. A piece of cheese appears. The food is plain, warm, and welcome. You sit this time, at least for several minutes. Conversation covers the market, the repair, the neighbor's fever, the price of salt, and whether the sky will hold. Your husband reports his work. You report yours. The lists are not symmetrical, but both are necessary. No one asks whether you completed a self-care routine. After eating, The work changes rather than stops. The field may need attention again. A fence or hedge needs repair. Grain must be threshed or winnowed in season. Beans must be dried. Apples may be stored. Herbs are bundled. Onions are checked for rot. A single spoiled item can spread damage through a store. Autumn is a long argument with winter. You salt, dry, smoke, pickle, ferment, store, mend, and count. Livestock that cannot be fed through winter may be slaughtered, turning one urgent problem into meat that must be preserved. Hay must remain dry. Roofs must remain sound. Fuel must accumulate. Clothing must be patched before cold exposes every weak seam. You check the thatch where last night's rain entered. Proper repair may require a skilled thatcher, but you can identify trouble. A leak above stored grain is an emergency. A leak above your bed is merely misery, which falls slightly lower on the household scale. The child holds the ladder while you look. This arrangement would concern every modern safety inspector. But the inspector has not been born, and the rain is not waiting. By late afternoon, your fingers have spun yarn again, chopped vegetables, cleaned cloth, handled coins, tied bundles, lifted pots, gathered grain, and examined a roof. Work is not a single repeated motion. It is constant switching between tasks, each requiring stored knowledge. This may be the greatest reason you would struggle. Modern life teaches deep competence in narrow systems. You can use a banking application, drive a car, send information across the world, and follow a recipe written by a stranger. Here, survival depends on broad competence in food, fire, weather, cloth, animals, plants, children, money, custom, and people. You are not allowed to be merely tired. Tired people still notice when milk turns, when a child grows quiet, when smoke changes, when clouds move, when an animal refuses food, or when a trader changes a measure. The church bell sounds across the village. Its meaning depends on the hour and occasion. Bells call to worship, mark time, announce death, warn of fire, celebrate or summon. Their sound travels farther than speech. You pause automatically, counting or recognizing the pattern. The bell also reminds you that daylight is leaving. Every task now faces a deadline. Work after dark uses fuel and poor light. Needles become difficult. Paths become dangerous. Animals must be secured. Doors must be fastened. Food must be covered. Embers must be managed. You gather the linen before dew dampens it. It is not fully dry, but it is better. You fold valuable pieces rather than leaving them in a heap. The small child attempts to help by dragging one end through the yard. Your expression communicates several centuries of motherhood without words. Inside, you add fuel to the hearth and begin the evening meal. The room fills again with smoke, voices, and the smell of cooking grain. Outside, the lane darkens. The market feels far away. The field disappears beyond the shutter. Your work has produced no finished monument. There is no cathedral at the end of it, no illuminated page, no royal seal. There is only food that has not spoiled, cloth that is cleaner, grain brought home, animals still well, coins carefully spent, children returned, fuel stacked, and a household prepared to wake again. History often records events when something breaks. A court dispute, a crime, a debt, a fine, a death, a transfer of property. The successful ordinary day leaves less evidence. The pot did not burn. The child did not fall into the well. The cow did not sicken. The merchant did not cheat you enough to matter. The roof held. Your achievement is the absence of disaster. And now, as darkness closes around the house, another part of your medieval life becomes visible. The work was difficult, but work was not the only thing shaping your choices. There are rules around you. Some are written, some are spoken, some are preached, some are enforced by neighbors before any official ever arrives. Tomorrow's food depends on your labor. Tonight's peace may depend on your reputation. The evening meal simmers, and the household settles closer to the hearth. This is the hour when work becomes less visible, but does not disappear. You stir the pot, mend a seam, listen to the children, and replay the market conversation in your mind. Outside, paths fade into darkness. Inside, the circle of firelight feels private. It is not entirely private. The village knows who entered your door. Neighbors hear arguments through walls. Family members share sleeping space. Servants, children, relatives, and animals make secrecy difficult. Reputation is not an abstract social score. It affects credit, marriage, employment, help in a crisis, and whether people believe you when your word is challenged. For a woman, sexual reputation can be especially powerful. Respectability is read through dress, behavior, company, speech, household order, and church attendance. The standards are not equal. Men and women may be judged differently for similar conduct. A rumor can carry consequences even when it is false. Yet the village is not a single mind. One neighbor enjoys scandal, another distrusts it. A third remembers that the person spreading the rumor once sold short measure. Medieval people are not passive pieces beneath a social system. They bargain with rules, exploit loopholes, defend friends, resent officials, forgive, accuse, and occasionally pretend not to notice something obvious because peace is useful. You have already done this today. You chose witnesses for the metalworker's promise. You shared information about illness. You agreed to carry a message. You greeted people at the well. Every interaction strengthened or tested a relationship. Survival is partly stored in grain and partly stored in other people. If your household falls into trouble, kin and neighbors may lend labor or food. The parish may offer charity. A monastery or hospital may provide assistance in some places. A lord may show mercy, demand payment, or do both in that order. Support exists, but it is uneven and often comes with obligation. This makes belonging valuable. It also makes exclusion frightening. The fire snaps. The small child has fallen asleep against a bundle of wool. You lift the child and place them near the bedding. Their trust is complete. Your own position in the household is more complicated. You are married, which changes your legal and economic identity. Under English common law, husband and wife are often treated as one legal person, with the husband normally representing the married couple in many formal matters. Property that a woman brings into marriage may come under her husband's control, depending on its type and the arrangement. Her ability to make contracts or appear independently in court can be limited. This does not mean a married woman becomes invisible in everyday life. She buys, sells, works, manages goods, negotiates, lends, borrows, and may operate a business. Local customs can allow more independence, especially in towns. Husbands can authorize wives to act. Couples work as economic partnerships because households would fail otherwise. But legal dependence matters most when there is disagreement, debt, violence, inheritance, or abandonment. The system often assumes that the husband speaks for the household. If he wastes resources, disappears, or acts against you, the theory of one legal person can feel remarkably like one person has been misplaced. You are not thinking about legal theory while stirring pottage. You know it through practice. You know which goods you can sell without question. You know which decision will require your husband's agreement. You know whether the manor court recognizes you directly in a certain matter. You know who among your relatives would support you if a dispute turned serious. The law is not one simple code. Royal courts, common law, church courts, manor courts, borough customs, and local practice overlap. The same woman may have one kind of capacity as a widow, another as a wife, and another under a town custom that treats a female trader separately for business purposes. Status also matters. A free tenant, an unfree tenant, a wealthy townswoman, and a landless laborer face different obligations. A noble woman's property settlement may involve estates and sealed documents. Your household's argument may involve a pig, 3 shillings, a strip of land, or the right to gather wood. The amount is smaller. The importance is not. The manor court meets periodically. Tenants may be required to attend. The court deals with land transfers, inheritance, debts, broken agreements, damage, brewing offenses, disputes, and breaches of local custom. Women appear in these records as plaintiffs, defendants, heirs, brewers, buyers, sellers, and people fined for conduct the clerk considered worth noting. You might bring a complaint if a neighbor's animal damaged your garden, or if someone withheld a debt. You might be accused of selling ale at the wrong measure. You might inherit a tenancy as a widow. You might pay a fee connected with marriage. The court is not designed to express your individual freedom, but it can be a place where you assert a recognized claim. Imagine standing there. The proceedings are spoken in a language you understand, while the official record may be written in Latin. Men occupy most formal offices. People who know local customs speak. Witnesses matter. Your confidence matters. So does your relationship to the person sitting in judgment. You cannot search previous cases. You cannot quietly message a solicitor. You arrive with memory, allies, perhaps an advisor, and the hope that the court values the same version of custom that you do. Now consider marriage itself. The popular story says medieval girls were routinely married at 12. The reality is more complicated. Church law set minimum ages at 12 for girls and 14 for boys, but minimum legal age is not the same as typical age. Elite families sometimes arranged very young marriages because property and politics were at stake. Ordinary people, especially in parts of northwestern Europe, often married later, after working and gathering enough resources to establish a household. Evidence before the 16th century is incomplete, so precise averages are difficult. But the royal child bride should not be used as a model for every village woman. Your own marriage may have taken place in your late teens or 20s. You may first have worked in another household. Your husband may have needed land, tools, savings, or family approval before the match became practical. The church increasingly defined marriage through the consent of the couple. In theory, the words of present consent could create a valid marriage even without an elaborate ceremony. This gave young people a form of agency that worried families and clergy because private promises were difficult to prove. The church encouraged public weddings, bans, witnesses, and ceremonies precisely because secret marriage created disputes. Consent in law does not guarantee freedom in life. Parents can pressure, employers can influence, property can decide what love cannot. A woman who refuses a match may face anger or lost support. A woman who accepts may be choosing among narrow options rather than following a romantic dream. But neither should we assume affection was absent. Medieval people wrote love songs, told jokes about marriage, quarreled, reconciled, exchanged gifts, and formed partnerships. Some marriages were tender. Some were practical. Some were violent. Most were probably complicated in ways recognizable across centuries. Your husband may have been chosen with family advice, but you know his habits now. You know how he eats when worried, how he speaks after ale, whether he keeps promises, and which task he avoids until the weather makes it worse. He knows the same kind of things about you. Romance has become an agreement about winter fuel with occasional moments of softness. Household authority usually places him above you in law and social expectation. Religious teaching often emphasizes a wife's obedience. The same teaching can instruct husbands to care for wives and condemn excess cruelty, but enforcement is uncertain. Domestic violence exists and can be tolerated more than it should be. Women may seek help from family, neighbors, local courts, or church courts, but protection is inconsistent. The village wall is thin, which can expose you to gossip, but can also expose abuse to witnesses. Neighbors may intervene, kin may threaten. A court may order a husband to treat his wife better or require sureties for good behavior in some circumstances. None of this forms a reliable modern safety system. It does show that people did not always accept household violence as a completely private matter. For tonight, your marriage is not violent. That choice keeps our journey calm, but it does not erase the risk from other women's lives. The church bell sounds again, and the household makes the sign of the cross. Faith structures the rules around marriage, sex, birth, death, food, work, and time. Your parish church is not merely a building visited on Sunday. It holds the font where children are baptized, the altar before which marriages may be solemnized, and the churchyard where generations lie buried. Its saints protect occupations, illnesses, travelers, women in labor, and local hopes. Its festivals interrupt labor and make the year meaningful. You attend Mass. Though much of the formal liturgy is in Latin, understanding does not depend only on translating every word. Gesture, sound, image, repetition, sermon, and ritual communicate. You know when to kneel. You know the stories. You recognize the holy days. The church may be the most colorful interior you regularly enter. Religion offers community, but it also disciplines. Church courts can hear cases involving marriage, adultery, sexual conduct, defamation, wills, and moral offenses. A public penance can damage pride and display authority. Yet women also use church courts, especially in disputes over marriage promises, separation, support, or reputation. If a man promised to marry a woman and denied it, witnesses to the words might become crucial. If someone slandered a woman sexually, she might sue for defamation. Records survive because people contested what was said about them. Medieval reputation is not simply endured, it is defended. The difficulty is proof. Private words leave no paper. A promise made in a field can be remembered differently by two people. Friends choose sides. Clergy examine testimony. The entire village discovers new enthusiasm for precise details. Your own wedding was public enough to avoid this. Family stood nearby. The parish knew. Goods moved. A meal followed. Someone drank too much. A relative told a story that became longer each time it was repeated. In this respect, little has changed. Marriage brings the expectation of children. Reliable contraception is not available in the modern sense, though people know and attempt various methods. Pregnancy may recur across a woman's married years. Fertility varies, miscarriages occur, infants die, and some couples remain childless. The simple image of every woman surrounded by 12 surviving children is misleading. Pregnancy does not remove ordinary work. You continue carrying, cooking, spinning, tending animals, and managing children for as long as you can. The household may adjust heavier tasks. Female relatives and neighbors notice your condition, offer advice, and prepare. Experienced women hold knowledge that male written records only partly reveal. Childbirth usually occurs at home in a female space. A midwife or experienced birth attendant may be present, along with relatives and neighbors. Wealthier women can retreat into specially prepared chambers, but an ordinary birth uses the room and resources available. A birthing stool, support rope, cushions, warm water, oils, herbs, food, prayer, and practical assistance may all play a part. Medieval midwives are not foolish figures waving charms while everyone waits helplessly. They possess experience. They recognize progress, position, bleeding, weakness, and trouble. They know methods passed through practice. Religious objects and prayers can exist beside physical intervention because your world does not divide spiritual and medical care as sharply as ours. The limits remain severe. A baby in the wrong position, prolonged labor, hemorrhage, infection, or retained placenta can become deadly. A skilled attendant cannot perform a safe modern cesarean section or summon a blood transfusion. Pain relief is limited. The mother's endurance is not romantic. It is required. You have given birth twice. You remember the heat, pressure, voices, fear, and the strange way time narrowed to a single task. You remember Alice's hands and the older woman's commands. You remember promising several saints an impressive list of offerings. You remember the silence before the first cry. The children sleep nearby because that silence ended. After birth, a mother may spend a period confined from ordinary public life while she recovers, especially in wealthier households where several weeks of seclusion are possible. The churching of women marks her return to church. For a poor household, complete rest is difficult. Other women may take over tasks, but food, animals, and older children do not suspend themselves for 6 weeks. Breastfeeding is common. Elite women sometimes employ wet nurses, though practices vary. Feeding an infant demands time and energy. The mother's nutrition matters in a household where portions are calculated. Another pregnancy can follow while a previous child is still small. Maternal death is a real fear, but it is important not to turn every birth into a guaranteed funeral. Most women survive individual births, and midwives assist many successful deliveries. The cumulative risk across repeated pregnancies is serious. Every successful birth reflects both luck and care. Infant baptism may happen quickly because the child's soul and survival matter urgently. If a baby appears unlikely to live, a midwife may know how to perform an emergency baptism. Her role carries spiritual responsibility as well as practical skill. Women's medical knowledge extends beyond birth. They nurse family members, prepare foods for the sick, clean wounds, change cloths, watch fevers, and decide when to seek outside help. A village may know a healer, a monastery may have an infirmary, a town may offer physicians, surgeons, apothecaries, barbers, or other practitioners, though cost and availability vary. Medieval medicine interprets health through the 4 humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, associated with qualities such as hot, cold, wet, and dry. Diet, season, age, and temperament are thought to affect balance. Treatment may aim to restore it through food, herbs, purging, bleeding, bathing, or rest. The framework is wrong by modern biomedical standards, but observation within it can be careful. Practitioners note urine, pulse, appetite, sleep, pain, complexion, and symptoms. Some herbal remedies contain active substances. Wound cleaning and sensible diet can help. Prayer can comfort even when it does not cure. The greatest unseen enemy is infection. People know that foul air, corruption, contact, or certain environments are associated with sickness, but they do not understand microbes. Hands may be washed, cloth boiled, and wounds cleaned without a germ theory. Helpful practices exist beside harmful ones. Your modern knowledge might not save you as easily as you imagine. Knowing bacteria exist is useful. Lacking sterile equipment, antibiotics, clean running water, laboratory tests, and precise doses is less useful. You may be able to explain why a wound is dangerous while still being unable to stop it. Accidents are common enough to shape caution. Open fires burn, tools cut, animals kick, water drowns, carts crush, ladders slip, clothing can catch, darkness hides uneven ground. The household has no emergency number. Help comes from whoever is close. Tonight, the older child shows you a cut from the field. It is shallow. You wash away visible dirt and inspect it. You may apply a clean cloth and a remedy trusted in your community. You keep watching for swelling, heat, color, pain, or fever. Observation continues after treatment because certainty does not arrive in a packet. The child asks whether it will hurt tomorrow. You say less than today. You do not know whether this is true. Reassurance is another form of household labor. Now the subject turns to the neighbor with fever. Alice has heard that the priest visited. This could mean the illness is serious, or simply that spiritual care is expected. The community may bring food, watch children, or help with animals. Illness reveals the strength of a household's network. It also reveals its fragility. If you become sick, much of the work you perform today does not vanish. Someone must carry water, tend fire, prepare food, manage children, care for animals, and preserve supplies. Your labor appears replaceable only until you cannot do it. This is the hidden power within your position. Law may place you under male authority. Formal records may name the household through your husband. Religious teaching may praise obedience. Yet the household depends upon knowledge concentrated in you. You know where the food is, what can be sold, which child reacts badly to a herb, which neighbor owes a favor, how much grain is seed, and when the cow's behavior changed. If you disappear, the family does not merely lose a worker, it loses a system of memory. That dependence can create respect, partnership, and bargaining power. It does not cancel structural inequality, but neither does inequality cancel agency. Medieval women are not modern women wearing old clothes, and they are not voiceless shadows. They act within constraints, sometimes accepting them, sometimes bending them, sometimes fighting openly. Think of the women you met today. Alice controls information and labor. The market woman negotiates price. The mother on the road manages children and travel. The widow may head a business. The midwife carries authority no man in the room can replace. The older woman at your hearth supervises everyone by the simple method of being correct too often. Each has power in certain spaces and vulnerability in others. Your own authority is clearest around the hearth. You decide how stores are used. You direct children. You manage preparation. Your husband may be the household's legal head, but if he casually reaches for the seed grain, history may witness an early experiment in constitutional limits. The meal is ready. You serve it, and the household eats. Conversation quiets. Hunger has greater authority than law. Afterwards, your husband checks the door and tools. You clean the pot. The older woman says a prayer. The children are moved closer to bed. Night compresses the household into one shared space again. You take out the garment needing repair. Needlework in firelight is difficult. A needle is a valuable metal object, small enough to lose and sharp enough to find with a foot later. Thread is not endless. You make each stitch count. As you sew, you imagine other women alive in the same year. In a town, a shopkeeper's wife counts stock and deals with customers. A widow signs through a seal or has a clerk write for her. A servant carries a tray through a great hall. A noblewoman oversees estates while her husband travels. A nun rises for prayer in the night. A fish seller argues over a price near a city gate. A poor woman searches for somewhere safe to sleep. The phrase, "a woman in the Middle Ages," is almost too broad to mean anything until we choose a place, a year, a class, a marital status, and a household. Your single day cannot represent them all. So before this night ends, we will leave your hearth for a little while. We will visit those other lives and return with a clearer answer to our question. Would you fail because medieval women were helpless? No, you would fail because they were not. For a moment, let the fire in your village house recede. The glow becomes a point in the dark. The roof becomes one roof among thousands. Roads cross fields, follow rivers, climb hills, and reach towns whose gates close at night. Bells answer bells across the landscape. Every light belongs to a household, workshop, hall, convent, inn, or room where another woman is finishing another kind of day. We begin in a town. The streets are narrow and crowded. Upper floors lean towards one another. Workshops open onto the street so that production and selling happen in public view. Water comes from wells, conduits, rivers, or carriers, depending on the town. Waste disposal is regulated because people notice when it fails, which is often. Our townswoman lives above or behind a shop. Her husband is a craftsman or merchant, but the business is not his private world. She serves customers, purchases supplies, keeps track of credit, supervises apprentices, prepares food for the household, and understands the quality of the goods being sold. If he travels, falls ill, or dies, she may keep the trade functioning. Town air does not grant freedom automatically. Guilds and civic offices are generally controlled by men. Regulations can restrict women's access to training or membership. A wife's work may be officially described through her husband even when customers deal with her every day. Still, towns create opportunities. Population density produces demand for food, lodging, laundry, clothing, drink, childcare, nursing, domestic service, and small goods. Women sell bread, fish, cooked food, candles, cloth, second-hand items, and ale. They run stalls and inns. They work in textiles. They lend small sums and chase debts. Our townswoman knows customers by face. She remembers who pays immediately, who needs until Friday, and who has needed until Friday since Easter. Credit is personal. Refusing it may lose a customer. Extending it may lose the money. She balances risk without a bank, ledger system, or legal department. She may be more numerate than literate. She counts goods and coins. Marks or tallies can assist memory. If the business is large enough, a clerk writes. If it is small, agreements live in repeated dealings. A customer who cheats her may discover that market news has several efficient distributors. Her home is not healthier simply because it is urban. Crowding brings smoke, animals, contaminated water, waste, and contagious disease into closer contact. Fire is a constant danger. A flame escaping one workshop can travel through timber buildings before enough water is gathered. At night, she checks shutters, locks, embers, stock, and cash. Goods attract thieves. Streets after dark are difficult and sometimes policed through watches, curfews, and local rules. She has more neighbors than you do in the village and may feel less safe among strangers. Would you survive her day? You would need to recognize coin, measure cloth, judge quality, negotiate credit, avoid offending a guild official, feed apprentices, keep accounts in your head, and notice when a customer hides a small object under a sleeve. You would also need to do the household work upstairs. By noon, you might miss the cow. Now the town fades, and a larger roof rises beyond a wall. The great hall looks magnificent when empty. At feast time it glows with fire, candles, textiles, music, polished metal, and the movement of well-dressed people. Yet grandeur produces work in direct proportion to how effortless it wishes to appear. Our servant sleeps in a shared space, perhaps on a pallet or bedding that must be cleared. She wakes before those she serves. Her tasks depend on rank. A chamber servant attends closely upon a lady. A kitchen worker faces heat, knives, heavy pots, grease, water, fuel, and relentless preparation. A laundry worker handles mountains of valuable cloth. A dairy worker rises early. A general servant is available to every task, precisely because no one has defined the limits. The household may contain dozens or even hundreds of people when a noble family travels with retainers. Status determines seating, food, clothing allowances, lodging, and access. The hall itself displays hierarchy. The highest table stands at one end. Servants move between kitchen and diners while trying not to become visible for the wrong reason. Food is prepared on a scale your village hearth never attempts. Bread may be baked daily, with the finest flour reserved for the highest ranks and coarser loaves for servants. Meat, fish, grain, wine, ale, spices, dairy, and eggs flow through storerooms. Accounts record purchases because feeding a great household consumes a remarkable share of income. Our servant carries a vessel through the hall. It is heavy, hot, and expensive. A stumble would be remembered longer than a year of successful carrying. She must know who receives what, when to approach, how to address people, and where to stand. Service teaches the body to anticipate. She learns a lady's gesture before the request is spoken. She recognizes which guest may complain. She knows which door sticks, which dog steals, and which senior servant has turned irritation into a profession. Would you survive her day? You would need to rise in darkness, carry hot liquid without spilling, remember an etiquette system no one has explained, sleep near co-workers, accept correction publicly, and remain calm. When a person wearing more money than your entire household asks why the bread is not fresher, you might be dismissed before dinner, although the bread would be excellent. Leave the kitchen noise behind. Climb a stair towards the private rooms. Here, the walls are stone. Fireplaces warm certain rooms. Glazed windows may appear. Beds have curtains. Chests contain fine cloth. Servants carry water, rather than requiring the lady to fetch it herself. This is easier in physical comfort. It is not easy in expectation. A noblewoman's marriage can bind families, lands, and political alliances. She may marry younger than many ordinary women because elite property strategy works differently. Her fertility is a public concern because inheritance depends on heirs. Her household watches pregnancies. Letters carry news of births. Failure to produce a surviving child can alter dynastic plans. She manages people, property, hospitality, and patronage. If her husband is absent at war, court, or another estate, she may oversee accounts, issue instructions, settle disputes, arrange repairs, collect income, and communicate with officials. The size of her world requires literacy or access to clerks. A seal carries authority. Her work is managerial rather than hidden. She does not churn the butter, but she is responsible for the household in which dairies, kitchens, stables, chapels, stores, and servants must function. She may control substantial resources as a widow or heiress. Some noble women become powerful political actors. Power does not equal freedom. Her movements can be constrained by family interest. Her children may be sent to other households. A political reversal can make property insecure. Accusations of disloyalty, adultery, or improper influence carry great danger. The higher the status, The larger the audience for failure, would you survive her day? You would enjoy the bed. You would appreciate the glass. Then someone would hand you an estate account in Latin or French, ask you to settle a tenant dispute, remind you that 30 guests are arriving, and quietly inquire about the absence of a male heir. You might request the village back. Now the castle rooms fall silent. A bell sounds in a different, enclosed world. Behind the walls of a nunnery, life follows a rule. Prayer divides day and night into offices. The bell interrupts sleep, work, meals, and private thought. Depending on the order and wealth of the house, conditions range from austere to relatively comfortable. Women enter religious life for many reasons. Some feel a vocation, some are offered by families, some seek education, community, status, refuge, or an alternative to marriage. Entry can require a dowry or contribution, which means religious life is not equally available to the poor. Our nun lives in a community led by an abbess or prioress. Women hold authority within the house, though male clergy perform sacraments and external officials may exercise oversight. The nunnery owns or manages property, receives rents, employs workers, feeds residents and guests, and maintains buildings. Prayer does not eliminate administration. The day includes worship, reading where literacy permits, manual work, meals, and duties. Some nuns copy or commission books, teach girls, care for the sick, manage estates, produce textiles, or perform specialized tasks. Others may know prayers by memory without advanced literacy. Silence is observed at particular times or places. Though no community of human beings has ever converted a rule of silence into the absence of communication, gestures, glances, and necessary speech find their way. Food follows religious discipline and the resources of the house. Fasting days are significant. Meat may be limited. Fish, pottage, bread, dairy, garden produce, and ale appear. Wealthier houses can eat well. Poorer ones struggle with debt and repair like any other institution. The nunnery offers protection from some risks of marriage and childbirth. It offers female community, spiritual purpose, and possible education. It also imposes enclosure, obedience, routine, and separation from ordinary family life. A nun does not choose each morning whether she feels contemplative. The bell has already decided. At night, she rises for prayer while the countryside sleeps. Cold enters the church. Stone holds winter. The words are repeated until they become rhythm. She stands among women whose families may have expected entirely different futures for them. Would you survive her day? You would need to wake in the night, understand the liturgical schedule, follow communal discipline, eat according to rule, and accept that personal time is not private property. Your modern phone would be useless, which may be the most spiritually productive feature of the institution. Perhaps you would last. Perhaps you would even find peace. But the bell would ring again before you finished deciding. We move now beyond the protection of a stable institution. Her house is smaller than before, or perhaps it only feels larger because one voice is missing.
The widow is neither automatically powerless nor automatically liberated. She has lost a partner, income, labor, and legal protection. She may have inherited goods, a tenancy, or a dower right.
She may be responsible for debts. She may have children too young to contribute much, and relatives eager to advise her property into their own hands. If she and her husband ran a trade, she knows the customers and methods. Widowhood may allow her to contract and litigate in her own name more easily than marriage did. Town customs may permit her to continue the workshop. On a manor, custom may recognize her succession to land, sometimes after payment. She appears before officials because property must be transferred and obligations confirmed. Her knowledge becomes visible. She names boundaries, rents, debts, tools, animals, and agreements. A clerk may have written her husband's name, but she knows how the household actually worked. She now decides whether to remarry. A new husband brings labor, protection, capital, and social stability. He may also gain control over property she currently manages. Remaining single preserves independence, but can increase physical and economic strain. The decision is not a simple contest between love and freedom. It is a calculation involving children, age, land, trade, kin, safety, desire, and the personality of the available man, which may be the most alarming variable. A wealthier widow can become a lender, employer, patron, or formidable market presence. A poor widow may depend on spinning, brewing, casual labor, charity, or service. The same legal category contains both opportunity and desperation. A widow takes bread from the oven and sets it to cool. She has brewed ale to sell. A small sign indicates a fresh batch. Neighbors arrive with jugs. She measures carefully because officials can find short measure and customers possess long memories. She knows that some people think a woman alone is available for courtship, exploitation, pity, or all three. She cultivates a reputation for competence. She speaks clearly at the market. She keeps the door secured. She maintains alliances with kin and neighbors. Would you survive her day? You would need to manage grief and business at the same time, defend property, raise children, calculate whether remarriage protects or endangers you, and remain pleasant enough that customers buy the ale. You would understand why independence can feel like both a key and a load. Now even that house fades. We follow a lane beyond the organized market, beyond secure tenancy, towards the edge of survival. Historical records often show poor women only when they ask for help, break a rule, enter a court, receive charity, or become someone else's problem. Their ordinary competence leaves little trace. Our final woman may be elderly, disabled, abandoned, displaced, or simply without enough land and wages. Perhaps her husband died without useful property. Perhaps employment ended. Perhaps harvest failure pushed the household apart. Poverty is not a fixed personal identity. It can arrive through a sequence of ordinary misfortunes. She takes casual work when available. She spins, washes, weeds, gleans, carries, nurses, or serves. Pay is low. Food prices decide whether wages are enough. A period of sickness destroys the small margin. She may seek aid from relatives, neighbors, the parish, a monastery, a hospital, or a wealthy household's almsgiving. Medieval charity is shaped by Christian duty. Giving to the poor can be understood as spiritually beneficial to the giver. This creates real assistance, though not a guaranteed system. Hospitals, in the medieval sense, often offer hospitality and care to the poor, elderly, sick, or travelers, rather than modern medical treatment. Religious houses distribute food on certain days. Bequests provide alms. Communities know who belongs locally and may be less welcoming to wandering strangers. Begging carries stigma and risk. Authorities distinguish between those considered deserving and those seen as able to work. A woman traveling alone is vulnerable to violence, accusation, and exploitation. Without a household, she lacks the basic institution through which most work and protection are organized. Yet she is not a blank symbol of suffering. She possesses knowledge, preferences, relationships, humor, faith, and strategies. She knows which kitchen gives scraps, which route is safer, which employer pays, and which feast day brings distribution. Survival at the edge demands its own expertise. Would you survive her day? Perhaps this is the clearest no. Not because she is weaker than you, but because you would arrive without her map of human relationships. You would not know where help can be asked without offense, which promise is reliable, which official will listen, or which door must never be tried. Money alone would not solve the first night if you did not know what the coins were worth. The darkness settles over all these women at once. The townswoman locks her stock, the servant clears the hall, the noblewoman withdraws behind bed curtains, the nun answers the bell, the widow banks her fire. The poor woman searches for shelter. Different rooms, different laws, different risks, 1 century. Now return to your village house. The garment in your lap has been mended. The children sleep. The meal is finished. The hearth has burned lower, and every unnecessary flame now represents fuel needed tomorrow. You make one last circuit of the household. This is not called a security check, but that is what it is. The door is barred, shutters are closed, tools are brought inside. Food is covered against mice, insects, damp, and opportunistic hands. Animals are secured. A fox needs only one mistake. A thief needs a different kind of one. You inspect the fire. Coals must be controlled without being extinguished if you hope to revive them easily. Sparks near thatch are dangerous. A child sleeping too close can be burned. A pot left unstable can spill. Fire has warmed and fed you all day, but it has not become tame. You store the salt where damp cannot ruin it. You hang wet linen where smoke and air may dry it. You check the milk. You move the spindle away from small feet. You put the needle in a safe place and then check again, because a needle is exactly the size required to vanish forever. The household's few coins return to a pouch or chest. You tell your husband the amount from market, the cost of salt, and the agreement with the metalworker. If he questions the price, you explain the seller's first demand and your final bargain. You may feel pride when his eyebrows rise. The work has an accounting even if no ledger exists. Goods came in, goods went out, obligations changed. Tomorrow's options have been altered by today's decisions. You wash your hands and face again with limited water. Perhaps you clean your teeth with a cloth or chew a useful twig or herb. You comb hair and inspect for lice. Lice are common enough to be managed, not welcomed. Fine combs remove them. Bedding and clothing can be aired, cleaned, or treated. The medieval person in popular imagination is proudly filthy, as if soap were invented by a time traveler. In reality, People wash, comb, launder, sweep, change linen, use herbs, and care about smell and appearance. They simply operate without showers, washing machines, modern sewers, cheap soap, abundant hot water, or germ theory. Your own body bears the day. Smoke clings to hair and cloth. Hands are rough. Nails hold traces of soil despite washing. Feet ache. Shoulders remember water and wood. Small cuts sting. This is not a failure of hygiene. It is the physical record of labor. You loosen outer clothing, but keep the linen shift for sleep. Clothes are folded or placed safely. You do not throw them onto a chair under the assumption that another clean set waits in a wardrobe. Damp garments must dry. Leather shoes are positioned away from direct heat that might damage them. The bed is prepared. Straw or other filling is adjusted because it compresses and shifts. Bedding may be shaken and checked. Blankets are arranged. Several bodies share warmth. Bed curtains, if you had them, would offer privacy and insulation, but your sleeping space is simpler. Night in the countryside is profoundly dark. Once the last flame is covered, the room loses edges. Sound enlarges. Wind moves the thatch. An animal shifts. Timber creaks. Rain begins lightly. Each drop a question about the repair above you. You recognize ordinary sounds. This matters because fear is partly the difference between a known noise and an unknown one. A fox, an owl, a branch, a cow, a neighbor's dog, and a stranger at the door do not sound the same to you. A modern visitor might find this silence peaceful for 6 minutes. Then the roof would creak, and every historical crime documentary ever watched would return at once. You are not unafraid. Theft, fire, violence, illness, and sudden weather are real, but you are accustomed to the soundscape. You know that the village is close. If a fire begins, bells and shouting will wake everyone. If someone calls for help, doors may open. Community surveillance feels restrictive in daylight and protective in darkness. Before lying down, you pray. The words may include familiar Latin phrases and prayers in English learned by repetition. You remember the living and the dead. You ask protection for the household. You may touch a devotional object, cross yourself, or think of the saint associated with a particular worry. Faith offers no guarantee that morning will come, but it places uncertainty within a story larger than one household. In a world with limited control over weather, disease, and death, meaning is practical shelter. You lie down. The child moves close immediately, bringing cold feet and complete confidence. Your husband settles on the other side. The older woman coughs once, then again. The animal space carries a warm, earthy smell. The last ember pulses beneath ash. Your day is over, except that a child's cry, a sick animal, a leaking roof, labor pains, an alarm bell, or a neighbor at the door can reopen it at any moment. This is where the title of our journey returns. Why would you not survive one day as a woman in the Middle Ages? You might survive physically. The date itself would not strike you down at breakfast. The water might be clean. The food might be nourishing. The people might be kind. The day might contain jokes, warmth, affection, music, prayer, pride, and satisfaction. The medieval world is not a machine built only to torture anyone who enters it, but you would struggle because almost every comfort you depend upon is a chain of invisible labor performed elsewhere. Clean water arrives through pipes. Heat arrives through systems. Food arrives preserved, measured, labeled, and inspected. Cloth arrives finished. Light waits behind a switch. Medicine arrives with doses. Time is displayed. Information is searchable. In 1325, you are part of every system. You do not merely use the fire, you preserve it. You do not merely drink water. You locate, judge, carry, store, and ration it. You do not merely eat bread. Your household plants, weeds, reaps, gleans, mills, kneads, bakes, stores, and protects the grain. You do not merely wear cloth. Hands prepare fiber, spin thread, weave, dye, cut, stitch, wash, mend, and preserve it. You do not simply call for care. You observe symptoms, know remedies, summon neighbors, nurse the sick, and continue the work that illness interrupts. Your first failure would probably not be bravery. It would be sequence. You would fetch water before reviving the fire, then discover breakfast requires both. You would use dry fuel too quickly, spill grain intended for seed, leave milk warm too long, wash wool incorrectly, lose the needle, offend the neighbor whose help you need, and agree to a market price without knowing the measure. Each mistake would be small. Together, small mistakes would consume the household's margin. The woman whose day you borrowed avoids those mistakes, not because she possesses supernatural toughness, but because she began learning before she could remember learning. She watched hands. She copied movement. She heard weather discussed. She carried smaller buckets before larger ones. She ruined thread until it became even. She learned which berries fed and which harmed. She listened when older women argued about birth, illness, food, and people. Her knowledge is embodied. Ask her to explain every step, and she may say, "You know when it is ready. You do not know." The second reason you would struggle is social position. Your expectations have been shaped by legal individuality. You assume your work, wages, property, movement, marriage, and body belong to you in ways not fully recognized here. Even when custom gives you room to act, authority is uneven. You might challenge a husband, official, employer, or priest in language that feels ordinary to you and reckless to everyone listening. You might ignore a reputation rule because it appears unfair, then discover that unfair rules can still control access to credit and help. You would know that the system could be different. That knowledge might protect your dignity. It would not automatically protect your dinner. The third reason is endurance. Today's work was not an exceptional harvest crisis. It was an ordinary day. Tomorrow repeats the fire, water, food, animals, children, cloth, cleaning, carrying, and planning. Seasonal work is added. Pregnancy may be added. Illness may be added. Paid work may be added. There is no appliance waiting to remove the most repetitive burden. Rest exists. Festivals exist. Sundays and holy days change routine. People sing, tell stories, play games, visit, drink, flirt, dance, celebrate weddings, attend fairs, and enjoy food. Medieval life is not uninterrupted labor, but rest is built within necessity, not outside it. An animal still needs feeding on a feast day. A baby does not observe the church calendar. A fire does not remain polite because everyone wishes to dance. And the day you experienced changes its weight with every season. In spring, the household emerges from winter stores with relief and anxiety. Grain bins are lower. Salted food is tired. New plants appear, but the harvest is still months away. This can be the hungry gap, when last year's supply weakens before this year's crop exists. You search gardens and hedges for useful greens, inspect seed, help with sowing, tend young animals, repair fences, and watch the weather as if watching a person make a dangerous decision. Lambing and calving bring new life and interrupted sleep. A healthy animal can improve the household's future. A lost mother or young animal can erase months of preparation in one cold night. You learn to recognize labor, weakness, hunger, and the signs that an animal needs help. The skills resemble midwifery enough that no one finds the comparison strange. Spring cleaning is not a modern invention created to sell storage boxes. Bedding can be aired. Walls and floors can be freshened. Winter's smoke, damp, and accumulated material are confronted when weather allows. Cloth is washed more thoroughly. Repairs delayed by cold become urgent. The brighter sun does not merely cheer the household, it reveals everything. In summer, daylight expands the working day. Hay must be cut, dried, turned, and gathered before rain. Gardens demand weeding. Dairy production can be abundant, which means more milk to process before it spoils. Flies discover every food store. Children roam farther with tasks and return carrying scratches, stories, and objects they insist are useful. Heat does not remove the hearth. Food still requires cooking. Brewing still requires hot water. Baking still requires an oven. You work beside fire during weather that has already provided enough warmth. Then you walk into fields beneath the sun, covered in linen and wool chosen for protection, modesty, and durability, rather than the comfort of a modern heatwave. Summer also brings fairs, pilgrimages, local celebrations, marriages, and visits. Work and pleasure mix. A saint's day may include worship, food, music, games, and trading. Young people meet. News travels. A household spends a little of what it hopes the season will replace. For one evening, the future feels generous. Autumn, the season of your borrowed day, is calculation made visible. Grain, fruit, nuts, vegetables, fuel, hay, and preserved meat are counted against the length of winter. Harvest success can bring feasting and wages. Failure makes every cheerful statement about the weather sound suspicious. You brew, dry, salt, store, mend, and guard. Rodents are competitors. Damp is an enemy. A roof leak becomes a threat to food as well as sleep. Livestock must be chosen. Which animals can be fed, which should be sold, and which must be slaughtered before winter consumes the fodder they need. Then winter narrows the world. Daylight is short. Roads turn to mud or freeze. Fingers lose feeling while carrying water. Work continues indoors around weak light. Spinning, sewing, repairing, preparing food, and caring for animals. Fuel disappears visibly. Smoke lingers. Every opening admits cold. Winter also gathers people together. Stories, songs, games, and conversation occupy long evenings. Christmas and its surrounding feast days interrupt ordinary labor where resources and custom allow. The church calendar places celebration in the darkest part of the year. The household eats something saved for the occasion and remembers that survival is not the only purpose of surviving. So there is no single ordinary day. There is only a cycle of different urgencies, and women carry knowledge from one season into preparation for the next. The summer woman thinks about winter fuel. The winter woman protects spring seed. The spring woman watches the crop that autumn must store. You arrived for one day. She is managing a year. The final reason you would struggle is uncertainty. A household may work wisely and still face bad weather. A healthy woman may still develop fever. A skilled midwife may still meet a birth she cannot resolve. A good harvest may be taken by rent, tax, debt, or war. A trusted animal may die. A bridge may wash out before market. Modern systems do not eliminate uncertainty, but they spread many risks across institutions. Your medieval household absorbs them directly. And yet, this is not the conclusion you expected. You thought the day would prove how miserable medieval women were. Instead, it proves how much they knew. Their labor-fed towns, clothed households, supplied markets, raised children, cared for the sick, preserved food, managed businesses, supported religion, and maintained communities. Their names may appear briefly in court rolls or accounts, often because something unusual happened. The thousands of days on which everything functioned remain largely unrecorded. A historian reads the record where the surface broke. Imagination, disciplined by evidence, helps us see the surface that held. You see it now in the dark house, the banked coal that survives until morning, the pot cleaned and turned, the yarn wound safely, the salt kept dry, the child breathing steadily, the shoes waiting near the door. None of these objects is dramatic. Together, they are survival. Outside, rain passes across the field and taps on the thatch. The repair holds. Water runs towards the lane. In the darkness, the church tower is invisible, but you know exactly where it stands. The village settles. Alice's house is quiet. The neighbor's fever may ease by morning. The metalworker's promise waits until market day. Grain rests in chests. Animals shift in stalls. Somewhere, a woman wakes briefly to feed a baby. Somewhere else, an old woman checks a fire. Farther away, the town gate is barred. The great hall is empty. The noblewoman's chamber is still. The nunnery bell will ring before dawn. The widow's ale ferments in its vessel. The traveler has found a place beneath a roof. The whole country is held through the night by people who prepared for it during the day. You let your eyes close. For the first time since waking in 1325, no one is asking you to carry anything. The floor is still cold, the shoes are still damp, the fire will need you again. But for this moment, beneath wool and beside the quiet breathing of the household, the work has stopped. You survived the day. Not because the day was easy, because for a few hours you borrowed the knowledge of the woman who belonged to it. And when morning returns, before the sun is fully visible, she will rise again. She will uncover the ash. She will find the ember. She will breathe gently, and the room will slowly fill with light. Good night,